Well, hello, bookish friends, and welcome back to the Millennial Book Junkie. My name is Monique, your resident millennial, and today we're going to be talking about the books that I read in July. It's going to be my July 2024 reading wrap-up. I read a total of 4 books in July. I read a mix of fiction and nonfiction, so 2 were fiction, 2 were nonfiction, and one of them was on audio and the other 3 I had in my possession. I also had an average rating of 4.19, so I read some good, it was a good reading month, I would say. I'm just gonna start going off by the books that I read in order, and the first book that I read was The Truth in True Crime by J. Warner Wallace. Now, this book is about a true crime detective. He's like a cold case detective who was an atheist for many years, and then he became a Christian later in his life, in his late 30s. And he basically talks about the cases that he did as a detective, but he also talks about the truths that he learned from each of these cases as they relate to Christianity. So I'll give you an example. Like there was like this one case where there was a young guy who was like living in kind of like a gang neighborhood, and he kind of grew up without a father, and he was very prone to gang violence and getting into trouble. And so basically he used that story to kind of touch on the fact that many troubled kids out there are troubled because they don't have fathers. And that's obviously not the main reason they're troubled, but he talks about the importance of having a father in your life and a good male figure, and kind of relates that back to Christianity and just, having a father in your life and all this stuff. But it's kind of stories like that where he just basically relates the cases to the truths that he believes in. And I found this really awesome in terms of learning about all the cases that he talks about, because obviously there's murder in here, which I am here for. And I actually found a lot of these really comforting. I'm learning a lot about Christianity. It's still a bit confusing to me in some areas, but I really just like learning about the values, and I absolutely love learning about Jesus, so there's that. So he just really talks about essentially the values that you should live by as they relate to Christianity. And basically, not to sound threatening, but these people who died, they weren't living by the Christian values. Not to say that everyone needs to live by Christian values, but he talks about it in that way of if they had only hung out with people who weren't killers type of stuff, then maybe they wouldn't have died. That kind of stuff. It was really interesting. It was very uplifting in some parts too. I gave it a 4. And there are definitely some things I'll be coming back to in this book, because honestly, sometimes I'm trying to figure out what to fall back on in my life when times get tough. And for me, it has always been God, Jesus, reading something spiritual. And I've definitely taken more of an interest into Christianity lately. I grew up a Catholic. And I don't know, there was a lot of very uplifting and just really inspirational ways of living in this book that comforted me for times when, I may not be feeling like the best, or, in times of chaos or stress or anything like that. So I found a lot of it uplifting. And if you're interested in any of that, this is a book to pick up. The next book that I read in July was Good Girls Don't Die. I really, really liked this book. It's by Christina Henry. I gave it 4 stars. It tells the story of 3 different women who are in horror movie scenarios. Actually, I lie. One is in a horror movie scenario. One is in a mystery scenario. And the other is in a slasher scenario. And I really, really liked this book because It kind of starts with like you not knowing what the heck is going on. Like this girl just wakes up and she's like in this house she does not recognize. She has a family she does not recognize. There's pictures of her on the wall. She got married. She had a kid, you know, but she doesn't remember any of it. And she's very confused as to what's going on. And you follow her as she's like, what is going on? And there's something definitely wrong there. And then in the second story, there's this, you know, young woman who is going on a trip with her friends for her 21st birthday, but they end up going to this cabin that she didn't know they were going to go to, and scary things start happening. And she just so happens to be a horror reader, like a slasher film watcher, horror lover. So she starts kind of wondering like, what is going on? Why do I feel like I'm in a horror movie right now? And then basically, yeah, a lot of stuff starts to happen, bad stuff, and she has to get out of there. And then the other woman is basically in like a Hunger Games type of situation where she has to fight for her life to survive and go through this maze. And then at the end, all the women that I've just mentioned come together, and it's like, I don't know. It's like, then you kind of figure out what's really going on. And the whole book, you're kind of wondering like, why are these women going through this? And you're trying to figure out what is happening. And you kind of get like, you know, clues as to what you think might be happening. I definitely didn't, I kind of knew, but it was an interesting twist of what was happening at the end. I gave this one 4 stars though, because man, like at the end, I just wanted something like more, I don't know. It was just over. And I was like, I don't know. I was expecting something more to happen at the end. But it was a very entertaining read. I really liked it. And the pacing was good. And yeah, solid 4. Very good. The third book I read in July was Verity by Colleen Hoover. I was really looking forward to this book. I loved It Ends With Us. This is my second book that I've ever read by Colleen Hoover. And I really liked it up until about like a little past the halfway point. It's about this woman who is a writer. She's an author, and she is tasked with finishing out the series of a really famous author. And so she has to like go to this famous author's house, and the famous author got into an accident. So she has to like go to this house with the famous author's husband and like sift through all her notes and her outlines and her work in order to write this novel, or this series. And we follow her journey doing that. And of course the author is there in the house, and you know, the main character uncovers all this weird stuff about the author, and she feels the need to kind of like warn the husband. And of course there's romance in there, and you know, it's Colleen Hoover. But I don't know. I think what I loved most about it is the fact that I want to be a writer. So I loved the first initial chapters because it was about this woman accepting like a deal to write these books. And I thought that was really cool. And she talks about writing a little bit, which I love because I love hearing about the craft of writing. And I was like, okay, this is great. I really like this. And I was just like really sucked into it. And then weird stuff started happening when she got to the house, which also really pulled me in. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is the best book ever. I'm like going. But then for some reason, like a little past the halfway point or at the halfway point, like nothing seemed to happen. I don't know. I don't know if it was just me, but like, I just felt like stuff happened, but it wasn't as exciting as like the first half. And I was like, why am I not glued to this book right now? I was just so glued, but then like, I don't know, the stuff that happened, it wasn't as exciting. And then when we got to the end, I was like, oh shit, like it's about to go down. And it didn't really go down. I don't know. I guess I wanted a different ending. I wanted something different. The twist at the end was good. I actually didn't see that coming. It was the twist was very good at the end, but then I didn't like the main character's decision at the end. I don't know. I gave it a 3.5. And I actually thought that I was going to give it, actually no, I lied. I gave it a 3.75. Okay, I didn't give it a 3.5. Because I felt like a 3.5 wasn't doing it justice, but it wasn't entirely a 4. And so I just felt, yeah, after I was done with it, I was like, I don't know, but it was very entertaining and I devoured it. I'm a slow reader, but I devoured it in like 3 days, and I was just like, it was really good until I got to that part. So I don't know. I was glad I read it. It was very entertaining, but I had some thoughts. And then the 4th book I read in July was Anxious for Nothing. This book is by Max Lucado. And this I gave 5 stars. This talks about leaning on Jesus and God to heal your anxiety. And it really spoke to me. I have dealt with anxiety, like many people, so much. And I have to say, I was very relaxed and calm while reading this book. He talks about a lot of biblical passages. He talks about like stories of Jesus, and there was just something very uplifting about it. I definitely felt a calm settle over me when I was reading this book, and it actually got me more into reading the Bible, which I am reading, and I am learning more and more about the stories in the Bible through books like this that talk about the Bible, because the Bible isn't always as immediately accessible. Sometimes when you read books about the Bible, they are more accessible. So I actually really enjoyed this book, and I've underlined it so much. There's like lots of steps in here on how to, like, you know, deal with anxiety. And I just feel like a lot of the passages are really, really helpful. And I think he talks about like anxiety being like the cousin of fear. I don't know. Maybe I won't talk about that because I don't really know what it is. But it's also really good too, because if you ever have trouble praying and asking God for help, this is a really good one too, because he gives very specific ways to do that. And I seriously feel like the burden of life is lightened for me ever since I read this book. So I'm definitely going to buy more of his books now, because I just really resonated with it. I really, really liked it. So Anxious for Nothing is one I would highly recommend. It really has, you know, changed something in me as it relates to anxiety. I feel a lot better. So I would highly recommend it if you're interested in that. So those were the books I read in July. Thank you so much for watching. It is summer. It is time for August, which you know what that means. Salt air and the rest on your door. And so yeah, thanks for tuning in. And if you like this type of content, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.